sex-linked traits. These are really interesting to me as well. So remember, with your sex chromosomes, you're going to have your XX, which is females, and you're going to have your XY. So sex-linked traits are going to typically most often be on the X chromosome. So you do have some that are, you can have some that are going to be on the Y, the traits that are on the Y, but not a whole lot. It's not found very often. So you have about 900 to 1400 genes on the X chromosome. And most of these are not involved in sex determination. Now, if you take a look at the Y chromosome, you have anywhere from 70 to 200 genes, and most of these are going to be specific for male development. So that's why with the X chromosome, you do have those sex-linked traits here. So a couple things about the sex-linked trait is if an individual has a recessive trait on the X, and he is a male, then it is always going to be expressed in the male. And the reason why, again, it's because they only have one X chromosome. So if you think about it, they only have one shot. So say he has the little recessive for hemophilia. He gets that one trait, he is going to have hemophilia. With females, not the same, because there's two X's. So in order for them to actually express the trait, have that phenotype, they have to have the corresponding genotype, which is two recessive traits. So they have a little bit harder of a chance, at low probability, of being a hemophiliac, which is, it can be possible, but you have to have a hemophiliac dad, and you have to have a mom that's a carrier. So that introduces our next term here. A carrier is going to be where a female is heterozygous. She looks heterozygous. So she is going to have an X, and she's going to have one dominant, and then she's going to have one recessive. So here she does not exhibit any phenotypic effects, but the thing is she's carrying around, and she can pass it on to her children. If she passes it to a female, that female is also going to be a carrier. But if she passes it to a male, remember, males only need one, the mom is giving it to them, and then that male is going to express that X-linked trait. So let's take a look at color blindness. This is also an example of an X-linked recessive trait. This is going to be where individuals have trouble distinguishing reds and greens. So again, women are rarely colorblind, and you would have to have a colorblind father and a carrier mother come together. So women are typically going to be more often carriers. If a man inherits the allele, then they are going to be colorblind. So let's do a Punnett square, because I love doing Punnett squares. We have to. So let's take a look and see what happens if you do have a father that is colorblind. Let's do a teeny little C and a Y. And you have a mother that is a carrier. There's a big C and then a little c. So let's put those together. Let's put the male up here, XY, and let's put the female down here, C, big C, little c. All right. So here is female. That's a big C, and that's a little c. And let's do the other female, and then talk about the females for a little bit. So as you can see, if we had this to where the mom is a carrier and their dad's colorblind, then they are going to, if we just look at the females, then they're going to have a 50% chance that the daughters that they have be colorblind. And the other 50%, they are going to be carriers. So again, I already talked about how this doesn't mean that they're going to have two daughters and one of them is definitely going to be colorblind, the other one's going to be carriers. If they had two daughters, both of them could be colorblind, because if they have a 50-50 chance with just looking at daughters. Let's take a look at the boys. We have an XC. Here's a normal one. There is a chance that they can have a normal color seeing child, boy. But there's also a chance that they are going to have a colorblind child as well. So that's kind of showing you what's happening there. This is hemophilia. So this is showing what they are putting together is with the male, that male is not a hemophiliac. He actually is going to have normal X with the dominant trait. And they are putting it together with a female that's a carrier. So they did it all for us. So this is great. We can kind of take a look. And I like this little picture here as well because it's showing the alleles, the loci, and the alleles on them. And they're showing how, look, here's the Y, and it's not going to have anything to do with it. So if we take a look at their daughters and their sons, there's a carrier daughter, and they do have a chance of having a son with hemophilia. They don't have any chance of having a daughter with hemophilia, though, so no chance at all, but they do have a chance of having a son with hemophilia. So X-linked dominant traits are very rare, and it's usually expressed, and it can be expressed in both males and females. But men, again, because they only have that one X, men are typically going to be more severely affected because of it. So last but not least, penetrance and environmental influence. Penetrance is going to be the percentage of the population that has the genotype but are going to exhibit the phenotype. So it is possible, it very much is possible, that an individual has the genotype for something, but their phenotype is not showing it. And one example that they give, and a lot of this, it can be influenced by a number of different things. One of them is environment that we'll take a look at here later. One example that they show here is, well, that's not, the picture is not showing pancreatitis. This one's showing something completely different. It's just showing penetrance, and I think it might have to do with cancer. But say that you have hereditary pancreatitis. The penetrance is going to be 80%, meaning that if you take 100 individuals that have the genotype for pancreatitis, 80% of them are going to actually have those symptoms of pancreatitis. They're going to have the phenotype for pancreatitis. But you can actually have 20% that have the genotype that never even have the symptoms. They never even have pancreatitis at all. So emphysema kind of works this way with penetrance and expressivity. So this chart down here is just kind of showing the example of what we're talking about. So here's a man, and he's got the genotype for pancreatitis, say. I don't know what it's for. We're just making something up, pancreatitis. But he's also having symptoms of pancreatitis. He's having some problems with his pancreas, inflammation of the pancreas. Well, he marries a woman that doesn't have the genotype. She doesn't even, so that means, of course, she's not going to have the phenotype at all. So what it's showing here is that they are going to have some children that's going to have the disease and actually show it. See the pink ones? Because of the mom, they're actually going to have some that don't have the genotype at all. But they're going to have kids that inherit the genotype, but they're not like their dad because of the fact that even though they have the genotype for pancreatitis, they actually their pancreas never becomes inflamed. It's interesting, right? It's very, very different. It's bizarre. And then, of course, environment is going to definitely affect genetic traits. And there is a whole lot of different ways that environment is going to affect it. Nutrition. We talked a little bit about, well, in 2401 you might have talked about how with nutrition, if you don't get the adequate amounts of nutrition, then the brain's not going to develop like it needs to. Growth is not going to happen like it needs to. Hormone levels can influence it. So many different things. Cancer is affected by environmental effect, or is affected by the environment as well, because there's going to be some cancers that are inherited, like the BRCA gene that is going to that can cause breast cancer, but the environment can be a factor as well. One thing that they've done was they've raised twins in different environments. Like they put one twin in a household that got plenty of adequate nutrition, but they put another one that didn't have the different nutrients and vitamins that it needed, and they display different phenotypes. And then, of course, another example is fetal alcohol syndrome, where, you know, this individual has all of the different traits to the genes that should develop these different phenotypic traits. But because an individual goes in and drinks alcohol while she's pregnant, is going to completely affect the way that the phenotype is going to turn out. Remember, we talked about how they will have the sloped eyes and the small circumference of the head and things like that.